Agenda. So the main thing we have going on is that we have this queue of governance reviews. Oh, and then maintainer. Wait, what on earth? Okay, sorry. Somehow this jumped all the way down to December last year, and I don't know why. Okay. Yeah. The yeah. Um, and Ali, you've just found out why I've suddenly developed the habit of not sharing any of my text with the project until I'm ready to merge.
Yeah.
Because some projects will immediately start trying to fix things, and then they will want us to re-review the things that they fixed, and at some point it becomes perpetual. Um, the
So I was naive, I think. So I was writing, please don't work on the issues reported, but I mean, it's obvious.
Well, no, they should. I mean, we want them to work on the issues reported. We just don't want to rewrite the review multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, yeah,
the
like not immediately. You don't have to do that immediately, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's okay. So,
yep. So the hey Ed, glad you could join. So we put their name in there. Okay. So there's so good luck with that. That is a high priority per the TOC. I mean, my tendency would be to finish up what you have there if you can, and then put a note at the top saying that this review is based on a snapshot of data from the state, and that the project has made changes to the governance since then.
yeah.
The so you know, and you know, if you know the I feel like in some of these cases we almost want a process where the project can PR in annotations to the review about the things that they fixed, with potentially our comments on them. Which I
Mhm.
mean, which they could do. We just need to tell them specifically that that's the appropriate action. Um, the so uh, the um,
So the reason that I shared this document is, I mean, I
mhm,
started the review beginning of August, and then after 2 weeks, I didn't make enough progress, and then I thought, okay, for transparency, let me share something. Uh, but yeah, it's not a good
mhm,
idea. We should just say, hey, we are working on it, etc. Um,
mhm.
and as you said, I think I will just stick to, I haven't restarted the review. I was on PTO last week. So when I restart, um, I will go with the snapshot that I started
Yeah,
with, finish it, and then if needed, if I will check that later on how much change is done, and then I can do a second version or something.
yep. Um, the okay. Um, yeah. What are you seeing so far with CubeFS? Are they going to have? Does it look like they're going to have blockers to matriculation?
Let me check. It was a bit like 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
but I don't think so. That's always a problem, identifying if something is blocker or not. That I
Yeah.
would probably consult to you for that. But I found some issues, things like there are some roles in the governance document which are only mentioned as a role, but they don't have duties or something like that.
Yeah.
More specifically, something called core maintainer, which means nothing. So there is no definition of core maintainer. I think that is the biggest issue. Other than
Yeah.
that,
That would be a blocker to my mind simply because, right, if they have like a reviewer role or sub project approver or something that doesn't have a solid definition, you put that in things to work on. But if it's the senior most role and they don't have a definition of how somebody gets in that role, then yeah, that's a blocker. Because obviously, if there is no written definition, the real life criteria might not be acceptable to the CNCF, right? Because obviously one of the possibilities of the real life criteria is works for X company, which is not acceptable in the CNCF.
Yeah, yeah. So what I would do in this case, I would just add my opinions if I think something is a blocker or something else, and then you or Dawn, you can review and correct me if needed.
Wait, so are they? Yeah, I mean, the other thing that we're starting to see a lot is these projects that have overhauled their governance in preparation for applying to move up, but they did not complete the overhaul, right? Because that was the same thing that Ed encountered with Pixie. Now, in the case of Pixie, they're moving to incubating, so not having completed the overhaul is okay. For graduation, it's not okay. You almost want to say, hey, if you're applying for graduation, you need to finish the overhaul and actually at least have had a couple of months of starting to use the new governance before you move ahead. I kind of understand projects doing this though, because the queue for getting reviewed for graduation can be months long, and they get over optimistic about the number of changes they can make in their project before that review happens. Okay. Ed, have you been able to raise that PR for Pixie?
This is the first time I've ever done a fork in GitHub, so I'm just working on that at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. It's an experience.
Yeah.
It's an experience. Let us know if you get stuck on anything. Yeah.
If I get stuck on anything, then I don't deserve to have a job in technology. So I'll have that done. Yeah.
Let me just say that all of us had some hand-holding or at least Q&A when we first did it. Yeah. None of this is intuitive. So
I just don't want to break. I don't want to break. I don't want to break the project. But yeah, recently I had more experience in like directorship and governance and stuff, and less in doing this stuff. So I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I will attempt to do it today and reach out to Josh if I've got problems.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to everybody else on the call. Josh and I have gone through the doc. I think we're ready for it to be submitted for review, for formal review, and using GitHub. It's the onus is on me to battle with GitHub to get it into the system.
Yeah. And right, and the next step is that Ed was going to raise a PR, and I was going to inject a couple of separate items that I spotted separately from Ed's review into the PR as comments, and then go there. The sort of summary here for Pixie to work on would be that their governance transaction is not complete. I will point out that Pixie asked for this review, so that was specifically, I think, what they wanted to find out. And since they're applying for incubating, the governance transition doesn't need to be complete. So
after we get this in, I'm happy to pick up another one as well. I know there's a big backlog, so yeah.
Yeah, so we're in sort of a situation. Actually, I wanted to talk about this in general. So there's a couple of things we want to do, right? Number one is I'm planning to reach out to the TOC. We need some way of tracking the TOC's matriculation review schedule so that we can prioritize governance reviews based on what's coming up for review in the TOC next, right? Because that order is not the order that they were requested in, right? So, yeah. And we don't want to be working on one only to find out that another one was up for review in the private TOC meeting next week and we haven't even looked at it. So I was going to go ahead and ask the TOC maybe they already have a resource that shows this order. I just don't know where it is.
Yeah, my
The,
my guess, Josh, is
Yeah.
that just I get the sense that if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, there was probably less incoming then,
Yeah.
and so people could manage it all. And now we've got massive amounts of incoming. You've got companies applying pressure, saying we want our stuff. Yeah, so there's just more workload, especially for a volunteer crew.
Mhm.
That's my sense,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, actually, what you're seeing here is a weird thing, which is that the governance review just became a requirement for graduating about 4 or 5 months ago, and that's why we're all of a sudden getting hit by all these review requests. And then one of the things is that we're in a situation where, so in addition to doing the prioritization, we could stand to do some work to make it more efficient for ourselves. And that work comes in sort of 2 stages. One is we need to rearrange the governance review so that it corresponds to the new graduation checklist, right? Because there's a graduation checklist that was adopted again about 4 or 5 months ago. It includes a number of governance items. And so we need to restructure the review around that so that the projects are not being confronted with 2 documents that look different and unrelated to each other. I mean, they're really not. We're asking for the same things, but it needs to be structured the same so that it's clear to the projects. And then from that, take Ollie's existing work to have an expanded governance self-assessment by the projects, right? Because again, as Ollie's encountering with CubeFS, if they had done a self-assessment, they would have immediately fixed a bunch of the problems because they would have found them themselves. We wouldn't be dealing with it in a very inefficient way. So then the question for us is, right, do we work on specific requests from specific projects, or do we work on that overhaul, which will make all future requests more efficient? And it's sort of a tough balancing act there. And I get part of it is to find out the prioritization, right? If something's going to be reviewed by the TOC 2 weeks from now, we need to get that finished. Whereas if we have a couple of months, then we could actually focus on the overhaul.
Yeah. Maybe does it make sense, Josh, for TOC or for us to publish our list of prioritizations and get TOC to make adjustments or request adjustments in our list rather than us? I mean, I don't know. Or is it us following their list, or should it work the other way around? I'm not sure.
Which list are you talking about?
Sorry, what I mean is this. You can either reach out to Emily and folks and say, right, what's next on your list, or you can provide them a request form, or show them the order that show them our job board and the order that we're going to process our projects in, and then they can request to make changes to that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. I would suggest that we actually maybe make a separate, maybe even a separate board specifically for governance reviews, so they're not trying to step through our general governance working group board, which has like 140 items on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's ask that from Rian.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So.
Xander, by the way, hi. We've never met before.
Sorry about that. There's only 4 of us. We can do a quick round of intros. Xander, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Xander. I'm just kind of observing. I usually pop in for the contributor strategy meetings. Yeah, wish I had more time to actually contribute much right now. I'm hoping that changes in the near future, but for now, I usually just try to join all these meetings to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening with this tag, and in the hopes that I'll be able to actually do more in the near future.
Hey, how do you
Jen-
get the Seattle 69 on your profile? What does that?
Oh,
sorry,
this is an
your
app called Boom. I'm trying it for the first time today. It just shows like name and location and local weather and stuff, just so if you're on a call with new folks, like you can, show
yeah.
face and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah. Although I
Yeah.
don't believe that the weather is 69 in Seattle. Sorry, Josh.
I was going to say Xander's also not mentioning that he's been a Kubernetes contributor for quite a while, and has in fact run a Kubernetes contributor summit.
That too.
Yeah. So Ed, you want to introduce yourself so Xander knows who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Ed Robinson. My accent's originally from New Zealand, but I live in San Francisco, in California. So I'm in a shared workspace at the moment with looking out onto the ocean. So currently, I'm an operating partner on a venture capital firm, and I have worked as a company director for several companies, and I'm also right now, at this moment, I'm working for a company called DataCore, helping them with the open source strategy for OpenEBS, which was a sandbox project, but is now an archive. It's on the naughty step, so we're looking at getting that back into sandbox. So that's what I do in my spare time. I've got a puppy who's just here, and I kind of work on some other bits and pieces too. That's me.
Good to meet you.
Okay. What building are you in, Ed?
I'm in the Ferry building, which is
Wow. Yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, the second floor of it.
The shared
right
workspace
now
is new though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's not a WeWork or anything. It's like a private sort of shared workspace. It's quite hip.
Nice. Okay. Yep, and you already know me and Ali, as does Xander.
Yeah.
So, okay. Okay, so I've recorded some of those suggestions, etc. So a couple different ways we could move forward on the prioritization. And then I just noted for the overhaul. Okay. Yep. And we have, and the governance review overhaul is just going to be as people have time. Because the self-assessment guide is a fairly heavy lift. Ali got started on it, but there's a lot of sort of documentation we have to write for the projects about what they should be looking for. Which is interesting.
Can I say sorry? And I try not to. I talk too much. If there's time in this meeting, do you guys want a 5-minute look at some stuff I've been working on to automate the process of collecting information?
Absolutely.
Just let me know when.
Do we need to have any more discussion on previous stuff? Ali, Xander? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll share my screen. So in my nights and weekends, I write macros. So what I'm doing here, I don't want you guys to look too closely at the data that I'm going to show you. I want to more talk about the general philosophy here. The reason why I say don't look too closely at the data is because I use a form of artificial intelligence, which is what I call self-verifying artificial intelligence. And I haven't quite built the verification in yet. So some of the data I'm going to show you is incorrect. So this is a Google Doc. And what I did is I've written an add-on here that when we're starting doing our reviews of projects, there's a lot of data that we're collecting, information that we're collecting, unstructured information that we need to turn into structured information, which is what we've got in this thing here. So if I take a project like I just reviewed Pixie, if I do a search on this, what my little add-in is doing here is it's going out and it's searching GitHub and it's finding the Pixie project. It just shows you the icon there with the thing just to verify it. Then I click the Analyze button. And what it's going to do now is it's in this spreadsheet here, it's going to fill out just the information like the logo, the repository, the contributor letter, the maintainer lifecycle, the decision making in the community meetings and the stuff like that. And it fills it out into that spreadsheet. And then when that's done, it'll write it into the document. Now, this is still, as you can imagine, there's a fair bit of tricky things in doing this. So I haven't got this looking great yet. But the idea is that it'll fill out some tables in here, which will make it easier. It'll make it easier by saying, okay, this is the contributor letter. I found it in the governance document at these lines here. And then it puts it into the document so that you can come in and edit that later on yourself. So just some stuff to make it easier for you. Ali, I haven't quite got it looking inside to get the exact version of the document yet, but I'm planning on this weekend I'll do some more work on it and see if I can get it. But if you give me any project at all, Xander, what project do you work on?
At the moment, I work largely on Kubernetes, and then I work on an OpenSSF project called Zarf, not directly involved with any other CNCF projects.
Yeah, but why don't we just pick a few out of our queue?
But I warn you,
that would be the way to do it, right?
I'm also, I've got a caveat, big caveat there. Okay, but give us one. Give me one.
Well, like for example, DAPR just added to our queue.
Dapper.
Yep.
Okay. I won't tell you the battles that I'm having with artificial intelligence at the moment, but yeah. So it's found it here. Now when I click the Analyze button, it'll add Dapper in, and it'll start to pull out the governance, the contributing, the code of conduct, project purpose, contributor letter, the maintainer lifecycle, decision making. And I've got to stress, I've already found places where the data is not correct, but that's my job to do it from here.
Yeah.
Then when I click write to doc, it's putting that stuff in there.
Okay. I mean, honestly, if it can just even get the links correct, that saves us some work.
Yeah. Yeah. And
GM.
I found a way where, like project purpose, I found a way where I can link into the document the line number of the MD file, so that I can have it so you can just click into it and A, check this information, and B, just make but yeah, hopefully that I can just automate some of that stuff. The other thing which we're doing here as well, for you guys who are a little bit more technical than I am, is that by putting it into the sheet, it effectively turns it into structured data, unstructured into structured. So we can use it elsewhere if we need to as well. Anyway, that's just something that I'm working on that I just thought I'd share with you guys.
Okay.
Just to, and I'm sort of making progress on this during the weekends. So hopefully I can evolve that just to make everyone a little bit more efficient.
Okay. So that's pretty cool. What AI backend are you using, and does it like require a subscription?
I'm using Gemini, Google Gemini.
Okay.
So I'm writing this in Google Scripts, and
Yeah.
and it's just my local machine at the moment. I will, if it gets to a point where it's useful, I'm happy to open source it, but it's not quite possible to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at where to focus your, I mean, from my perspective, the first thing to do would be to just have it find the links, and ideally the links via snapshot version, which has been a pain in the butt to do manually. So if it can do that automatically, it saves us a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to get that done this weekend. I just have to party a bit with the GitHub API.
Yeah. Always a challenge. Always a challenge. So yeah. Because the summaries are going to be like a harder thing, right? Because the problem is that for anything LLM generated, we can't necessarily trust it, which means we need to double check it, and that's just as much work as looking it up ourselves in the first place.
Yeah, I've had an interesting problem where I ask it to find the community meetings, and I tried it on like 5 or 6 different projects, and it would come back with this really convincing thing like the community meeting is every Wednesday at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Everyone's welcome to join. The maintainers are welcoming any community, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I go and check the documents, and it's completely made up. Like it's not actually there at all. So interesting challenges. So I've yet to apply the verification algorithms on top, which is what.
Okay. I mean, mind you, you're trying to solve something that the LLM folks in general are trying to tackle. So this might be harder than it looks. Because
anyway, I just thought I'd share it with you because it's kind of a fun thing that I think will make everyone's jobs a little bit easier. Anyway.
Yeah. That would be good. I mean, because like where I would see this going, if we could get it relatively reliable, would be to make it part of the self-assessment, right? To say, hey, run this script and it'll fill in the basic information, and then you can add all of your other stuff to that.
Yeah, I think that exactly is like you're saying. One of the problems is you have something like project purpose, like it's the one of the top things. I'm pretty like I know that my OpenEBS guys, they didn't realize that they need that. They didn't realize that it would be useful to have a section in the README called project purpose. And I think like if projects knew that, hey, you don't have to do this, but this is the kind of thing that we look for, a lot of them will go, that just makes our life easier if we know what it is that we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of that goes through the project template. The documentation end of that is not as robust as it should be. And that's one of the things that goes into the whole self-assessment guide and everything else is we're going to end up beefing up a lot of our documentation on contribute.cncf.io, right? Because we actually need to say, hey, here's a bunch of things around project purpose that you ought to have somewhere. Sometimes it's in the README, sometimes it's in the contributing guide, sometimes it's in governance. People put project purpose in different places. And here's why you should have those things, right? Because actually, there's a couple of things that go into project purpose because the sort of general project purpose. What does the project do, right? There's the audience. Who does it do it for? And then there's scope. And very few projects actually have the scope statement. And the scope statement says, here are the features that are in scope for the project. And importantly, here are the features that are out of scope. So please don't raise PRs about them. And that scope thing is actually important because it avoids a bunch of contributor frustration. Because otherwise what happens is people get into these arguments with the maintainers about, oh, hey, I wrote this feature, why won't you accept it?
Yeah.
But we don't actually have that on contribute.cncf.io. We have it in sort of the form of notes on the README template, but it needs to be clearer and more human readable as an example
Yeah.
of the work that we've got cut out for ourselves.
I think in my experience, and at least in my experience, like a lot of the people who create successful open source projects aren't necessarily good governance people, and so for them, just giving them direction,
Yeah.
is helpful.
So, yeah. Oh, Ali is asking you to try Knative in your tool.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right, let's do that.
That'll be
Let's do it one more time.
That is an
Okay,
older
here
and more
goes.
complicated project.
Okay, I just got to check something first. Okay. I'm getting a few kind of interesting crashes.
Yeah.
Knative, like that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's thinkings. Is that the right logo?
Yep.
Okay, let's see what it's doing. It's getting confused at the moment between governance docs that are in community versus in the main project repo. So I'm still working on that.
Well, and that's honestly one of the things to report, right? Because when we go over the section where it says governance findability, if governance documents are scattered over several repos, or worse, if there are contradictory governance documents in different repos, that's one of the pieces of feedback we want to give the projects, right? Because they're not generally aware of that, right? They know which document is the real governance document, but that doesn't mean anybody else does.
So I didn't pick up the maintainers file. That for
Okay.
some reason it's complicated to get. But again, this is my first. I only got it all working together over the weekend. So and I'm automating Google Sheets and automating docs, and then firing stuff at to artificial intelligence. So there's a few moving parts here. But yeah.
Like the community meetings, I think they were saved for Dapper and Knative. Right?
I'm pretty sure that's not right.
Yeah. It's okay. I mean,
We'll get there though.
yeah.
That's the thing with artificial intelligence. It always gives you an answer. The answer may not be right, but it's always going to answer something to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the tough part about LLM based stuff, right? Is that it will always answer as opposed to saying could not find, right? Which is really what we want, right? We want it to tell us that it couldn't find something, because
I've given it the instruction as well, because you can do stuff. You can say, you are a researcher. All of your findings must be based in fact. If you're not sure of something, just return null. You're right. I've given it all of that information, but yeah, it's.
I mean, I feel like you're fighting. I feel like you're fighting the core LLM architecture, right? Because like the core purpose of LLMs is to generate something regardless of input, and trying to get an LLM to do something else is going to be a continuous battle.
So I'll show it to you guys at the next meeting, and Ali, I will run Knative through it again, and we'll see what happens. And my job is to get that correct.
Yeah. So, okay. But awesome, fun work.
Thanks. Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah, if I can contribute something just to help everything move forward quicker, I'll be happy with that.
Okay. So let me go ahead and share the project board. I'm not going to go over the entire project board, but we should actually jump in here and just look and see if there's anything that we've lost track of that's become urgent. So let me share my screen. Okay. Ta-da. And here's our board. We have a bunch of governance reviews, which we've already discussed. All the new stuff is governance reviews. For backlog, we have a bunch of stuff. I don't know. This ought to have got it. Yeah, so we've written documentation to go with some, but not all of the templates. Some of it was supposed to be done by contributor growth working group, but contributor growth working group is not perfectly active right now. And so it'll fall to us to sort of, because things like the contributor ladder is both a contributor recruitment document and a governance document. And we do actually want to complete that, particularly because since it's one of the more complicated documents, projects tend to struggle with it a lot. And also, honestly, some of the paramount examples like Kubernetes are not actually great examples for a new project. Some of them, like rating our documentation for code of conduct, is actually not, that would be a short doc. Because what we just need to tell projects is, hey, you need to use the CNCF code of conduct. You can either tell people to report directly to the CNCF COCC, or if you're going to handle the immediate code of conduct requests, here's what that looks like, and you will need a code of conduct committee. And that README template, which is where we explain project purpose and stuff, and we don't have the full docs on it. So, but that's not new. Also is for the contributor ladder is to create some simplified contributor ladder examples, because the template that we have is kind of a contributor ladder construction kit, and projects are not understanding how to use it because it's complicated and kind of abstract. Some old stuff. This one we should actually move up in priority, which is because the TOC asked for this a while ago, which is what governance remediation process means is if a contributor feels that a project is not following their own governance, where do they report it into whom? And we kind of worked something out with the TOC of what that's going to look like. But we need to actually create a document and put it into contribute.cncf.io. I think. I don't know where that we would put that. That's one thing we didn't work out, which is where this would go. Because there isn't a clear, because the audience for contribute.cncf.io is largely project maintainers, but somebody who's going to report a problem with governance is likely to not be a maintainer, because if they are a maintainer, generally there's a problem with governance, they can fix it. So that is definitely one that I need to actually bump up. More governance reviews. Oh, right, Tecton governance review, which kind of actually has to be either Dawn or Ed, circumstantially.
What does Tecton do?
Tecton's a CI/CD platform,
Okay.
and they've been part of the Continuous Delivery Foundation. But because the Continuous Delivery Foundation is breaking up, they want to join the CNCF. I mean, that said, there is not a date set for Tecton's review to join the CNCF at the incubating level, which is why a governance review is involved, right? Because they're joining at sandbox level, there wouldn't be a review. So this is not urgent timeline wise. It's just that sort of these days, one of the two primary corporate sponsors for Tecton is Red Hat. So it's better
Yeah.
if neither Ali nor I are the ones to review it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
just
I think like you were saying, Josh, the getting some guidance and direction from
for
TOC
priorities,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and the whole maintainer committer thing issue.
I don't know what to do with these kind of tasks.
Yeah, no, this is something I need to do because it's pretty political, and I just need to. The problem is I need to create a massive PR that hits all of the CNCF documentation in TOC and Foundation repo, and removes all mentions of the word committer and replaces it with maintainer. Because maintainer has a formal meaning in the CNCF, and committer does not. And probably bolsters the actual definition, right? Because there are definitely cases for projects that have a steering committee, for example, the project maintainers, as far as the CNCF is concerned, may not be the code maintainers as far as the project is concerned.
I understand. Yeah.
So, and that needs to be spelled out somewhere as well. The problem, sort of historically, Ed, is that the original wording used in the CNCF operating documents was committer. And the problem with the word committer is it's a kind of meaning, it's an antiquated way of referring to people who have the ability to merge code that dates back to CVS and Subversion. But it's kind of meaningless when everybody's using Git, because in Git, everyone's a committer.
Yeah.
But we had a chair of the TOC for a while that had no rational attachment to the term committer. And so overhauling that was blocked. And now it's not blocked anymore, but I haven't gotten around to creating the PR. So I think that's going to have to be me, because there will be a fight about it, because some of those people are still around.
Yeah, I won't go into this thing.
Yeah. I mean, legitimately, the CNCF should actually be using another term like project leader to avoid the confusion between the term code maintainer and project leader. But I don't want to go that far, because that would be
I really like.
overhaul.
If I give my 2 cents, I
Yeah.
really like the terms not having any conflict with terms that are used in corporate America. You know, like some projects using the term director or senior director, or they're using some terms that are quite often used in corporates. And I think it's really good to have a separate set of terms so that things don't get confused with people's job titles elsewhere. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and that's why a maintainer gets used, right? Because it's not generally anybody's job title. Like I said, it's just confusing for a minority of projects that have a more complicated governance structure, right? Because for the vast majority of projects, the code maintainers are the project leaders, right? There's no distinction between those two groups. But there are some projects where those actually are two different, although usually overlapping groups. And for them, it can be a little confusing. But what's really confusing right now is that the CNCF docs are throwing a third term, which is committer, at them. And literally no project I've ever looked at has a role called committer, because it means a specific thing in Git that is not a project role. Okay, but I'm not seeing anything else. So the one thing that this review was sort of good for was, and at some point I need to actually finish up the cloud events review. probably simply by merging it with a huge disclaimer saying that this was a snapshot in time and that a lot of the issues raised there have been resolved. The big issue with the cloud events review that the TOC needs to follow up on is that they do not have a practice of maintainer rotation, as in the people who are their project leaders, which they call admins instead of maintainers, are the people who were the admins when they created the project, less the couple of people who have left. And so they have not added a new admin since the creation of the project, which is potentially a major problem. And that's something when we're doing these governance reviews for graduation, right, is that the main thing we're looking for from the maintainer list and their maintainer history is, does the project already have an existing practice of promoting new maintainers? Because if they don't, then that project is in danger of, if all the existing maintainers leave, they have no way to recover from it. And we've already had that experience with a couple of CNCF projects, and we don't want to repeat it. So and that was one of the things I went with Cert Manager, right? Because Cert Manager was worried about 2/3 of their maintainers working for the same company, and I said, you know, from my perspective, that's not as much of a problem, because among other things, you already have the history of people leaving that company and retaining their maintainer seat, as well as recruiting one person who did not work for that company and giving them maintainer stuff. And that's what we want to see, right? Would we like to see that one company becoming a minority of the maintainers? Yes, but I think the company would also like to see that. So I'm not really worried about it. Okay, and I think that's kind of everything. Everything else. The graduation levels thing is going to get resolved when we overhaul the self-assessment guide, and obviously the self-assessment guide is a big thing.
Hey Josh, after I get the Pixie into the big machine,
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to